Hey everybody, Erica here. I'm coming to you with another video about resumes. I used to be, actually very recently used to be an executive director of a nonprofit called Purpose Driven Advocacy Center here in Omaha, Nebraska. And one of my many jobs was part of the employability department. And my main job in that department was to um, look over and correct and redo resumes. So I figured, why not do a video? I'm actually getting ready to do a workshop to help high schoolers and pre-college kids put together some resumes, and I thought, why not? Had to write that script, might as well put it in a video. So here it is. How, or some tips, not step by step, but some tips on how to write a resume. Number one, use the same font. I cannot tell you how many resumes I saw had 16 different fonts, from Comic Sans to Times to Arial to David to the symbol one to Impact. It was I've seen a lot. So use one font. That'll be great. It's the most professional looking, even if you don't use like Times, even though Times or Arial are usually the most common ones. You can do something like a David font that still looks very professional, but please don't don't use 16 fonts. Okay? Two, spell check. Most of the word processing documents nowadays has a spell check. You should use it. It sounds very simple, but that is usually one of the biggest problems that I had to correct with spelling. Nothing makes you look more unprofessional or less qualified than a spelling error. Granted that these people don't know you from David, they don't know you from Adam, they don't know you from Abraham or Isaac. So all they see is this piece of paper. So if you have misspelled words all over it, really bad first impression, excuse me. Plus, think about it this way. If you and one other person were the final two people for this job and you had the exact same qualifications, they're pretty much going to go by what it looks like. I know, I've done it. I've been a hiring manager before. I've been on a team of hiring managers. This is just something that happens. Um, Usually the one with the least amount of mistakes gets chosen. If they're really that equal, and in a perfect world, but it's not a perfect world, so it isn't. But usually when it gets down to the two, it comes down to things like that. So if it's just you and one other person and your resume is full of misspelled words, you're probably not going to get the job. So use the spell check. Tip three, list your strongest skills and your longest profession first. If possible. Sometimes listing your longest profession isn't possible, but at least list the strongest one. What I mean by that is the one you had the most responsibility, the one where you had least supervision, but were still required to do a whole bunch of things. The thing where you can physically show with proof that you went above and beyond. Those are the things that you want to try and get at the top of your resume. Most hiring managers have a whole stack of papers. And while most of them have every intention of looking at every single detail, it doesn't always happen. So you can pretty much be sure that the first quarter of your page is what's going to stick with the hiring manager. So you really want to make sure your strongest stuff is at the top. So don't put your job that you had for 2 months first and then put your job where you were supervising 25 people for 16 years second or third. That should be more toward the top, not the job that you had for 2 months. So I hope that makes sense. So list your strongest skills and your strongest jobs first. So even if you didn't have a job for very long, if it really pinpoints the skills they're looking for, that needs to go toward the top. Also, if you haven't had too many jobs, and let's say you're just coming out of high school or you're just coming out of college, or you're in the process of getting a degree, what I would do also is list some courses that you took that either applied to the job or showed that it required effort. So if you were just graduating high school, I would list 3 or 4 AP classes or honors classes. Or, when it gets down to where you list your skills or your certificates or whatever, I will list if you got an honor roll or things like that. You really have to play up your own strengths within your own realm. Don't lie. I'll get to that later. Don't lie. But really do that. So if you're coming out of college and you hadn't really had a job before, and let's say, like, I'm a marketing major, so let's say I haven't had a job before that had anything to do with marketing. I have, but let's pretend I haven't, and I'm applying to a marketing firm. I would put things like my accounting class, highlight that. I would highlight the different marketing classes that I had, whether it's online marketing or PR marketing. I would really pull those out. I'm not going to say what grade I got in them, but I will say that, these are courses that I've taken so that I can show that I know what's going on, the general compass or canvas, whatever you want to call it, of what the job needs to be. So play up your own strengths. Do not lie, but take what you have done, take what you have learned, and really highlight that as close to the top of the paper as you can without it looking weird. Do not have one big paragraph with 18 sentences on it. Don't do that. But still, as best as you can toward the top of the paper, make yourself look as strong as possible. Okay, step 4. No wild colors. No neon pinks, neon greens, yellows. As crazy as it seems, I've had to redo more resumes that you would have ever thought that had yellow on them. Paper is usually white. I get that, there's colored paper, but most of the time when you're turning a resume, you want the paper to be white. Don't print in yellow. Don't print in neon colors. Generally, dark blues or blacks. Generally. Now, I know if you use a word processor document processor like Word, they have the templates where some have like those dark reds. I think one has a purple. Those are okay. Those are fine. It's not overbearing. It's not the whole paper. But as far as the ink goes, make sure it's a color that's readable. Please don't make the hiring manager strain, because if that's a strain for any reason, especially if there's a lot of applicants, they're not going to take the time to really see that you could be the best possible person they could hire for that job. So please, no yellows, no neon greens, none of that. Okay. Tip 5, not step 5. Tip 5. If you're not sure, if you've never made a resume before, there's nobody really around to help you, use a template. I know sometimes people say, no, don't use those templates. No, 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 no. But if you're really not sure, Word, especially Word, I'm a PC user. Nothing against Mac, but I'm a PC user, so I'm giving you PC things. But Word has some really good templates. You can move things around, but if you're not sure, they do give you a good solid foundation to start building your resume on. If you have the updated, I don't even know what year Word I have, but if you have the updated versions of Word, they even have templates of specific resumes. So they have an entry level type template. They have an engineering one, I believe. I think there is a medical type one. So it gives you those hints that pertain to that field so that it can help you pull out your strengths and get hired by that company and get that dream job that you've always wanted to get. So if you're not sure, use a template. If you don't have Word, usually if you go to Google and type in resume template for manager job at a construction site or something will come up to help you. So if you have Word, I would suggest using Word first. If you don't have Word, search on Google. You can find almost anything on Google. 6, show yourself off. Do not be afraid to show off. This is not the time to be humble. Not the time. Your resume is there to say, hey, here's what I can do. This is what I can do for you. You need to hire me. That's what a resume does. Now, don't put those words specifically in there, but that's generally what a resume is supposed to do. It's supposed to say, hey, look at me, the person you need right here. I can get you all that money. I can get you all these customers, whatever the job is. Your resume is supposed to show that person, that company, that department that you are the best person for the job. So, show yourself off. Show them how, or tell them how you secure that $2 million account for your job, or how you supervised 15 people during a night shift when the night shift manager had to go on maternity leave at the last minute because she had to get an emergency C-section, and then you had to retrain everybody, and based off your training, your 15 people you've been supervising, their productivity increased 67%. Whatever it is, you need to show yourself off. That's what a resume does. I have had so many people where, and when I redid the resumes, I also interviewed them, quote unquote, to find out what they did, because a lot of the time they weren't showing themselves off. So I had to dig and grab them and shake them and all types of stuff to really find out the stuff that they've done. And the majority of these people have done a lot of stuff, but they thought it wasn't important. I'm talking about they've done things in the religious aspect, in the community, in their own neighborhoods. It's like, those are the things that really show people, show companies that you're a well-rounded person, because more and more these days, companies are looking for well-rounded people. And let's say you don't have all the qualifications, but you have had so much experience volunteering in the community that just adds to it, and then they know you can do the job anyway. Your resume is not the time to be shy about you. It is the time to show yourself off. Don't count anything out. Just don't. If you have somebody you can go to talk to, like the employability department at my job, my old job, this was a free service, so people were able to come and talk to us. If there's something like that in your area, I would suggest going to them, because sometimes talking about it, like, oh yeah, that's right, I did do that. Or, oh yeah, that might that might help me a little bit. So don't count anything out. This is the time to show you off. You are worth showing off. You need to believe you're worth showing off. So show off. End of story. All right, tip 7. If you're not sure how to word your resume, yes, it needs to be professional sounding and all this other stuff, but if you're not sure, Google it. Each career field, each job category, whatever you want to call it, they have certain verbiage that they use. Search the job description name you're applying for in Google and just say job description at the end. So let's say you're looking to be a social media manager. You could go to google.com and say social media manager job description. What should come up is a whole bunch of job descriptions. If the company you're applying to isn't there, don't worry. Most of the same social media manager job descriptions will sound the same. Click on a couple. See the way they write their words, and as you're writing out your experience, your job experience, or whatever experience you have that you're trying to show them, try and say it that same way. So instead of saying, I looked over, you should say, I supervised. Or instead of saying, I taught training from the company manual. That sounds boring. Say, I trained the new employees on the correct processes and procedures of the company. See how much better that sounds? I said the same thing, but just said it a different way. So I would search whatever position you're applying for, job descriptions. Put that at the end. Look at the way people are writing their job descriptions and try and format your resume in the same way. This may sound daunting, but a lot of the times it really isn't, because you'll read these things, you'll be like, That's what I did at so and so job. Most of the time, you can pretty much use the words they use. So instead of saying taught, say trained. Instead of saying looked over, say supervised. Things like that. So that's what I would suggest doing too. Um, all right, number 8. Do not lie. Here's what I was talking about earlier. Do not lie. You may get past the hiring manager, you may blow them away at the interview, but there comes a point where you're gonna get caught. Um, it's just better to be honest. It really is. If you say you can do something on your resume and you really can't, it's not a good look. Because then if you get caught, they won't trust you. They'll be like, what else did you lie about? So it's just better to be honest from the jump. So as you are looking at different ways to word your job experiences, make sure you're still telling the truth. If you train somebody, if you taught somebody how to do something, that's training them. So that's still telling the truth. But if you didn't, that shouldn't be anywhere on your resume. So don't lie. 9. Review it. Check for misspelled words, incomplete sentences, run on sentences. Check that the formatting is the same. What I mean by that is if you're using bullet points, make sure that one job has bullet points and one job has numbers. Make sure that's not happening because you want to make sure that everything looks the same. So that's what I mean by formatting. So if all of your category headlines like education or experience, skills, things like that, if all those are bold, make sure that one isn't just underlined and not bold. Things like that. That's what I mean by formatting. Um, Make sure that when you're describing what you did, sometimes you use periods, sometimes you don't. Make sure that's kind of formatted the same as much as possible. This is really more about the visual aspect. A lot of the times, like your first impression, you can't really get rid of it. It's the same with your resume. You want to make sure it looks good, that the first time they look at it, they are impressed. So if everything's the same, if the formatting's the same, there's no misspelled words, things like that, you'll be good to go. Also, make sure that you spell your name right and you have your right phone number and your right email address. So just have it multiple times. Not that people don't know how to spell their names. It's just, if you're typing a long time, just stuff happens. Okay, we're all human, stuff happens. But just double check. I actually had a lady actually who had applied for all these jobs and she wasn't hearing anything back. And so she came into the office and met with me. And I said, well, have you called to check on the status of your resume application? And she said she hadn't. So I told her to call. And so she called and they were like, oh, we called you, but we didn't get anything. It comes to turn out she mistyped her phone number. So very important. Make sure you have the right phone number. My last tip. Tip 10. Have somebody else look it over for you. Have somebody else look it over for you. Have somebody else look at it for you. Uh, this some people may be nervous about this because you don't want to see you don't want people to see what you have or haven't done. It's okay. Find a person that you trust. Find somebody that isn't judgmental. If a company in your area has a service like my other job did, where they would come to somebody and they could do resume overviews, or maybe if you would have a really good relationship with the lady at your library, it doesn't have to be anybody professional at all. Just have them look at it. After you look at your own stuff for so long, sometimes you miss stuff. And so if somebody else sees it, be like, oh, hey, you misspelled the word that. It could be stuff like that. It's very little stuff. It always happens. Even with mine, it happens. When I switched careers, I had to redo my resume. And I thought it was fantastic. Yes, this is great. I'm going to go this direction now. Fantastic. I actually had my sister look at it. And I actually had a couple words misspelled. It's just because it's like when you write an essay for college or write an essay for high school. After you look at it for so long, sometimes the words just start flowing together. And a resume is not something that you want to do that. Yeah, you can get away with it in high school or college, but with the resume, you want to make sure everything is as pristine as possible. So, if at all possible, have somebody else look at it for you. Um, that's a really important tip, and that's my last tip. So, I hope I helped you today. Um, Again, this is what I do. I help people with the resumes. Even after I left my other job, I still help people with resumes. I still do workshops on revising and getting the best resume you can. So, thumbs up this video. I will do other videos like this if you want, but I hope this helps somebody out today. And don't forget to subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram. You can be my friend on Facebook. All that stuff will be down below. I will also list a couple of links to websites that will give website tips. No, sorry. That will give resume tips, not website tips. Websites that give resume tips below. So, happy hunting. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video.